According to Borson, reporting on analysis from The Economist, Anduril, Palantir, and SpaceX are at the center of a profound shift in how the United States wages war, particularly highlighted by the recent conflict with Iran and the challenge of countering cheap Iranian drones. According to Borson News, the key lesson emerging from the Iran conflict is brutally simple: using traditional, very expensive missiles and interceptor systems to shoot down swarms of low-cost drones is economically unsustainable. This cost imbalance is forcing the Pentagon to rethink how it fights and how it buys technology, and that is exactly where companies like Palantir, Anduril, and SpaceX come in. Borson mentions that Emil Michael, a former Silicon Valley executive who now holds a senior role at the Pentagon, puts it bluntly: the world's dynamics have changed. For stock investors and enthusiasts, that single sentence captures the strategic and financial opportunity. The old defense model, dominated by slow procurement cycles and gigantic, monolithic platforms, is being challenged by a new model centered on software, data, networks, and cheap but smart hardware. In this episode, we are going to explore what this news means for Palantir as a stock, how it fits into the broader shift in U.S. defense strategy, and what investors should pay attention to in terms of risks and opportunities. Let's begin with the core problem highlighted in the article: the economics of modern warfare. Drones have become the symbol of asymmetric cost. A relatively cheap drone can threaten assets that cost millions or even billions of dollars. Shooting down that drone with a traditional interceptor missile can be many times more expensive than the drone itself. That is a losing equation over time. For investors, this is crucial. When cost curves flip like this, the organizations that can restore economic advantage to the defender stand to gain enormous strategic and financial value. This is where data, AI, and software-defined defense come into play. According to Borson, companies such as Anduril, Palantir, and SpaceX are effectively reshaping the operating system of U.S. defense. Each of them attacks a different layer of the problem. Palantir sits at the data and decision-making layer. It is not building fighter jets or missiles, it is building the brain that connects sensors, data feeds, and human decision-makers into one coherent picture. In an environment with constant drone threats, hypersonic missiles, cyber attacks, and electronic warfare, having a unified view of the battlefield is not a luxury, it is a requirement. Anduril focuses on autonomous systems, sensor networks, and AI-driven defense platforms. It provides physical and software tools that can detect, track, and often autonomously respond to threats, including drones, with much cheaper and more scalable systems than traditional air defense. SpaceX, through Starlink and its launch capabilities, provides the communications backbone and space-based infrastructure. Persistent, resilient connectivity is essential for modern network-centric warfare. Without bandwidth, low latency, and survivable infrastructure, all those advanced AI systems and data platforms become far less effective. From an investor's perspective, Palantir is arguably the purest public market play on this trend today. Anduril is still private. SpaceX is still private as well, although there are indirect ways to gain exposure through some funds or investors, but that is outside the core focus here. Palantir, on the other hand, trades on public markets and increasingly positions itself as the operating system for defense and intelligence. So what does the Iran drone experience tell us about Palantir's potential revenue and strategic positioning? First, it underscores the centrality of software and AI to defense efficiency. When cheap drones swarm, the traditional answer is to fire very expensive missiles and rely on human operators working manually through siloed systems. That is neither fast nor affordable. Palantir's platforms, such as Gotham and its AI-driven decision tools, aim to automate large parts of that workflow, fusing radar data, satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and field reports, prioritizing threats, recommending responses, and distributing targeting information in real time to shooters and interceptors. In theory, this means each defense dollar goes further. When budgets are under pressure and the cost of conflict is spiking, that value proposition becomes extremely compelling for governments. Second, the Iran lesson reinforces the demand for continuous adaptation. Traditional defense programs can take many years from conception to deployment. Software platforms like Palantir's can be updated on much shorter cycles. That agility is important because adversaries are constantly changing their tactics: new routes, new payloads, new flight profiles, new jamming techniques. The side that can learn and adapt faster gains an advantage. This aligns strongly with how Palantir markets itself, as a partner that embeds with customers, rapidly iterates on software in operational environments, and continuously delivers updates. For investors, that suggests not only recurring revenue but also potential expansion within customers as new capabilities are rolled out over time. Third, the news emphasizes that the Pentagon is becoming more open to Silicon Valley ways of working. The presence of a former Silicon Valley leader such as Emil Michael in a senior Pentagon role is symbolic. It suggests that key decision-makers understand software economics, understand venture-style speed, and recognize the need to bridge the cultural gap between government and tech startups. This is favorable for Palantir in several ways. The company has spent years fighting skepticism within government procurement systems. It now benefits from both a track record and a cultural shift that values agile tech more. Moreover, Palantir has already endured the early controversies around its role in defense and intelligence, so it is somewhat battle-tested in the political and ethical arenas. However, investors should not treat this as a one-way bet. There are important risks and competitive pressures. First, competition is intensifying. Anduril is one of the most aggressive private challengers in the defense tech space, building both hardware and software, and positioning itself as a full-stack defense company. Traditional players like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman are investing in software, AI, and open architecture systems to avoid being disrupted. Cloud giants such as Microsoft and Amazon are also involved in classified cloud and AI projects. Palantir's edge is its deep integration with existing defense and intelligence communities, plus its specialized tooling for complex data fusion and operations. But there is no guarantee that this edge will remain unchallenged. Investors should watch for signals such as the size and duration of new contracts, the degree to which the Pentagon pushes open standards that make switching vendors easier, and whether Palantir manages to remain at the center of joint all-domain command and control initiatives. Second, budget dynamics matter. The fact that traditional interceptors are too expensive against cheap drones does not automatically mean defense budgets will rise indefinitely. Politicians may demand greater efficiency, or redirect funds toward other priorities. The opportunity for Palantir is to be seen as the cost-saving enabler, the software that lets militaries do more with less hardware spending. If Palantir successfully frames itself this way, tightening budgets could actually help it gain share at the expense of more traditional, hardware-heavy programs. Third, geopolitics and ethics remain double-edged for Palantir. Its identity is tied strongly to Western intelligence and defense. If public opinion in key countries hardens against large tech firms working with militaries, or if shifts in foreign policy lead to changing procurement priorities, Palantir's long-term positioning could be questioned. That said, the rise of visible threats, like mass drone use and state-backed proxies, often makes the public and policymakers more accepting of robust defense capabilities. Now, let's translate these strategic themes into the kinds of questions investors might ask themselves when they see news like this about the Iran conflict and the role of Anduril, Palantir, and SpaceX. One question is, how durable is Palantir's role in the evolving defense ecosystem? Borson's article implies that the Pentagon is moving decisively toward a new type of warfighting, in which networks, sensors, and AI are central. Palantir's position in intelligence, targeting, and mission management means it is well embedded in precisely these functions. For Palantir to remain durable, it needs to make itself increasingly indispensable in critical operational workflows, from intelligence preparation of the battlefield, to live targeting, to post-mission analysis and learning. Another key question, can Palantir expand beyond its current core customers? The United States and key allies already rely on Palantir for various intelligence and defense tasks. But as new forms of warfare spread, particularly drone and missile threats, more countries will recognize the need for integrated defense software. This creates export and collaboration opportunities, especially within NATO and partner nations that buy US or Western systems. From an equity perspective, that suggests a potential multi-decade runway if Palantir can win more international contracts and expand from pilot projects into national-level platforms. A further question is about the balance between government and commercial revenue. While this particular news focuses on warfighting and the Pentagon, Palantir has been investing heavily in its commercial business. Interestingly, the same technologies that help militaries defeat cost asymmetric threats can help corporations optimize supply chains, cybersecurity, and resource allocation. For example, the ability to detect patterns, anticipate events, and allocate responses in complex systems has clear analogs in logistics, energy, and finance. The Iran conflict narrative may therefore reinforce Palantir's brand as a high-stakes, mission-critical company, which can spill over positively into the commercial sphere. Corporates often like vendors that prove themselves in the most demanding environments. However, some commercial customers may be wary of being associated with a highly militarized brand, so Palantir must manage its messaging carefully. Zooming back out, the central takeaway from this news is that war is becoming more software-defined, more data-driven, and more economically constrained. The glamorous image of defense used to revolve around jets, tanks, and aircraft carriers. Today, the hidden infrastructure data centers, satellites, ground sensors, AI models increasingly determine success or failure. According to Borson, the Pentagon has learned the hard way that simply throwing more expensive hardware at cheap drones is not a viable long-term strategy. Instead, the answer is smarter coordination, smarter sensing, and smarter response, all of which are software-first problems. Palantir's thesis, from an investor's perspective, is that it will be the backbone software that orchestrates this complexity, both in government and in critical civilian sectors. The involvement of high-profile, tech-friendly leaders inside the Pentagon suggests that this vision is politically and institutionally feasible. Of course, investors should remain cautious about valuation, execution risk, client concentration, and political risk. But when reading news like this where a major conflict exposes the economic fragility of traditional defense, it becomes clearer why data and AI companies serving national security can command premium attention. Finally, as defense tech broadens beyond traditional contractors, the entire investable universe may shift. Over time, more Anduril-like companies may go public. Space-related infrastructure firms may spin out divisions or list separately. Cloud and AI leaders will deepen their government engagements. Palantir sits near the center of this realignment, giving today's investors early exposure to the software-defined future of defense. According to Borson, the world's dynamics have changed. For markets, that change is being expressed through new kinds of defense companies, new spending priorities, and new doctrines. For Palantir shareholders and watchers, this is both an opportunity and a test, a chance to participate in a structural transformation of defense, and a challenge to assess whether Palantir can maintain its edge as the battlefield, both physical and digital, keeps evolving. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you found this analysis helpful, consider subscribing so you do not miss future deep dives into how geopolitical events shape the prospects of listed companies like Palantir.